If I asked you if you wanted freedom, you'd probably say yes. However, a lot of us, myself included, struggle to envision what that actually looks like beyond quitting our jobs, which sure would be nice, but I think there's something more important. So in this video, I'm going to focus on a side of freedom that is accessible to us all. The freedom that comes through skill, as well as physical and mental strength. The idea that being good means being free. It's a line that comes up repeatedly throughout Haikyuu across a number of characters, with its first appearance, I believe, being from Yamaguchi and his discussion with Shimada, which gives us a very similar quote: "To truly enjoy sports, you have to be strong." So obviously the example here is sports, but it applies to everything. Taking care of your health gives you the freedom to actually do the things you want to, instead of being held back because you don't feel great or you're tired. Practicing your social skills gives you the freedom to speak to whoever you want. Having the discipline to stick with things when times get tough gives you the freedom to pursue and actually achieve whatever it is you want to. And that last one is the focus of Haikyuu. We see it in a lot of different characters, but the one I want to focus on today is Hoshiumi. I'm going to run through some parts of his backstory, and you'll see how that all ties into that line, in particular, the mental side of it. Hoshiumi has been obsessed with volleyball since a very, very young age, and yet sadly ended up being the only short king in a family of giants. He's had to watch everyone around him surpass him in an instant. First with his older brother, who just walked into a training session and hit a great spike on his first try. And as someone who's been playing volleyball for maybe 3 months now, and to be honest, still can't do that, even remotely consistently, to be able to do that on your first try is very impressive, and just seems to hammer home the point to Hoshiumi that he's born without. Years on, this only becomes more extreme, as after playing for close to a decade by this point, he's now got competition for his spot from someone who's only been playing for a year, from a player who embodies that unfairness of the world and whose name I can't really pronounce, Gao Hakuba. He stands at 6'8", which makes him the tallest in the series, just ahead of Yakuzawa. He's seemingly gifted with natural strength, and whilst he's certainly not Hoshiumi's level yet, there's a pretty huge difference here in that Hoshiumi spent the entirety of middle school on the bench, which, forgive me if I'm wrong here, it's a bit different in the UK, but if he started in 2nd grade and didn't play until high school, I think that's 8 years on the bench, whereas Gao seems to become a starting player for a very strong team almost instantly. So what does any of this have to do with that line? Well, let's go back to when he was a bit younger. Spending years on the bench the way he did, it would have been extremely easy for him to have simply stopped playing volleyball, to have allowed his height to dictate that he simply couldn't do the thing he wanted. Instead, he opted for a different path, to find the freedom found through strength, practicing everything and anything he could relentlessly, which is something else I want to talk about, because being short, he knew that there were some things simply inaccessible to him, and so he accepted his weaknesses. He ignored the weapons he couldn't wield and instead focused on all the ones he could, carefully, persistently, honing them all to a wicked point. As one of, if not the most well-rounded player in the series, Hoshiumi practiced everything, not just spiking, but receiving, serving, and most notably, setting. Now, of course, everyone does practice everything, but he took it to another level entirely. Rather than simply being things that he has to be able to do, he instead turned them into potent weapons. For example, he didn't just get good at overhand passes, he got amazing at them, to the point where he can reliably set no matter where he is on the court. In doing so, he gained the freedom to stay on there. However, as cringy and cheesy as it sounds, the greatest strength, which offers the greatest freedom, is linked to what we were just talking about, and it's to be able to have faith in your own wings, not the ones you wish you had or the ones you had of other people. This is something I've always struggled with, and I won't lie, I still do. I definitely still do. From my physique to my channel to my job to my flat, I've always found myself constantly comparing myself down to the tiniest detail, and it really zaps all enjoyment of whatever it is you're doing. But if we're talking about actual freedom here, having the strength to not compare yourself to others gives you the freedom to actually feel good about yourself, to be proud of your progress and happy of how you're doing. And for Hinata, this was something that had bugged him ever since he first joined Karasuno and was labelled the Greatest Decoy. It wasn't what he wanted. He thought it was uncool and he wanted to be able to spike like the taller players he saw. But with time, he realised that Hinata Shoyo, standing on the court, is far more important to him than whether he's called the Greatest Decoy or the Little Giant, or whether he even has a nickname. In the same way Hoshiumi discarded the weapons he couldn't wield, Hinata not only did the same, but also discarded the things which didn't matter to him as much, and in doing so, broke the shackles of being the greatest decoy isn't cool, and most importantly, I wish I was like them. But there's a reason it took him so long to kind of break free of these chains. He had to give his brain some evidence that it actually worked. It's kind of hard to do when you've got zero proof that it's a good idea. To be clear, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, in fact, you should. I've just always found it personally quite hard. But by this point in the story, he'd already beaten some pretty huge names and played a major part himself in doing so. He'd seen the proof that he could reach the same heights as anyone else, literally in his jumping and metaphorically in his future career. And in this match here, against the modern day Little Giant, who's already reached Japan's youth camps, Hinata fully has faith in himself. And Hoshiumi had done the same too. Rather than letting his height get him down, he simply accepted that there was nothing he could do about it. But this idea goes way beyond volleyball, and there's one player in particular I think really embodies this idea in the real world, Nishinoya. However, I'm going to pass things over to someone a lot of you likely know for that, but do be warned, there will be manga spoilers beyond this point.
Hey everyone, it's Annie Essays, and I'm here to talk about Nishinoya with regards to the line, being strong means being free. In the post-time skip match between the Jackals and Adlers, Furodate puts a thematic stamp on the idea that being good means being free through the reintroduction of Nishinoya. During this match, we see many of our favorite characters reunite, with one exception. Noya is nowhere to be seen. Near the end of the first set, Asahi clues us in to what he's been up to, living off the coast of Italy, fishing for marlins. After high school, Noya chose to pursue a life of adventure instead of one on the court. Throughout the story, Noya has been the embodiment of playing freely. As libero of an offensive-minded team, Noya allowed his teammates to play without the fear of getting blocked. Outside of the Inurazaki match, Noya brought a fearlessness and free perspective to every game. He extends his freedom to his choice of career, foregoing expectations of becoming a professional athlete and instead pursuing a life on the open sea. Noya's decision to quit volleyball and the way he handled himself on the court shows how expectations and fear deeply connect to a person's ability to become free. If you are one of the most talented high school volleyball players like Noya, you are expected to become a professional athlete because athletes are held in such high regard. It's seen as a waste of potential if you don't go pro despite being talented enough to do so. The same expectations for how you should live your life applies to the style in which you are expected to play. Small players are liberos, and the tallest are middle blockers. Furodate toys with our expectations of players all the time in Haikyuu. After Noya's reintroduction, he highlights the uniqueness of the Jackal's playstyle, first with Bokudo's unorthodox but now signature chest receive, followed by an Atsumu setter dump, with the chapter ending as Hinata fakes a spike into a set. The freest players on the court always play at the highest level because they are not bound by the strategies of their opponents. You can't back them into a corner because there is always another direction to go. They're not limited by what you think they might do and always make the best choices for themselves. That is captured in the panel at the end of this chapter, with Noya standing on the edge of the sea, paired with Hinata's surprise set. So much of Haikyuu's story explores how volleyball reflects real life. The lessons learned on the court give the players a foundation for making difficult choices. The freedom we see Noya play with flows into his willingness to set aside the career path most would have chosen and follow what his heart tells him to do. He is able to journey across the world, literally, because he tackles fear head on. Noya is no stranger to fear, as clearly shown in the match against Inarizaki. Atsumu puts Noya's receiving skills to the test by getting the better of him with his jump floats. So far in the story, Noya had never shown fear, taking on Date Tech and Shiratorizawa with confidence, empowering his teammates to overcome their own trepidations. Atsumu has the skill to challenge the weakest part of Noya's game, overhand receives, and he targets Noya relentlessly, hoping to break Kurasuno's Guardian. For Date plants the seed for Nishinoya's journey to Italy in this match. Noya tells everyone about his childhood, how for the longest time he was scared of everything, but his grandfather made sure to put him out of his comfort zone, assuring him that if something gets too scary, your friends will be able to help you through it. Noya overcomes his fear of Atsumu through the help of Kinoshita, and gets back to his free style of play. Years later, Noya's decision to move across the world is rooted in that fearlessness. Through the trial and errors of competition, Noya built a foundation to accept fear and try new things, something all of us can learn to apply to our own lives. The difference between good players and great ones is often fear. Good players have preconceived ideas about the talent levels of themselves and their opponents. They are expected to play within a certain style, and if they fail to score or make a receive, then a substitute will be on the way. Great players avoid that mindset, never focusing on the consequences of failure, but on the results if they succeed. Great players shatter expectations on their way to reaching new levels of skill. If you're too focused on what might happen if you fail, then how could you be expected to succeed? Noya's example throughout Haikyuu shows the importance of finding freedom within your life. It comes from minimizing fear, relying on friends, and always trying out new things. Don't allow your life to be dictated by the expectations of what others want you to do, and instead focus on yourself. Noya depicts this level of freedom in spite of playing the most restricted position on the court. He isn't allowed to play offense, but that doesn't hold him back from empowering his teammates to spike each ball with full confidence, because even if it takes using his foot to make it happen, Noya finds a way to make the receive. For Hinata, he embraced freedom by traveling to Brazil, building up his body and making sure he could fill any role on the court. For Nishinoya, his freedom was found on the coast of Italy, a life at sea where he literally has the freedom to go in any direction he pleases. Getting good means breaking the shackles of expectations and fear, and taking life in a direction you want it to go. All of us want to be good, and we have to look no further than Noya to see how sports can help us achieve that.
A huge thank you to Annie Essays for his segment. So to finish off the video, I just wanted to say that once you've heard this line, you'll start to notice it everywhere. I gave some examples earlier, but it really does apply to so much. You know, the stronger your ability to resist distractions, the more time you have. The better you get at something, the more you get to do it. The more confidence you have in yourself, which is typically built up from all sorts of strength, the more comfortable you'll be overcoming the fear to do pretty much anything. And when you put all that together, you get someone like Nishinoya, free to travel and go wherever he wants in the world, picking up whatever job he fancies to get by. So I think the assumption is that the routine of building yourself up is something that's boring. You know, we've all done this. I don't want to do X because it'd be boring, but anyone doing those things knows it simply isn't true. It's actually pretty fun. In particular, the rewards of it are very fun. Whereas by comparison, when you don't have the strength to drop the things harmful to you, you're a prisoner to them. So if you're looking for more freedom, the answer is likely simply getting stronger. Thank you very much for watching. I've got plenty of other Haikyuu videos if you want to check them out here. Thank you to Northstar UK for joining as a channel member, and I'll see you all again soon.